everyone. And we're rolling. This is Mark Goldberg with UN Dispatch. I'm speaking with the United Kingdom's ambassador to the United Nations. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me, for being on the program. I just wanted to get right into it. I wanted to talk about topical issues. Earlier in the week, you had a all-night session at the Security Council on the flotilla incident. It seems one of the outcomes of the presidential statement that you agreed to, was that there ought to be some sort of investigation into the incident. It also seems that there is dispute as to who or what should be doing that investigating, or a discussion about that. And I want to get your take, your opinion, on who or what body should be investigating what happened.
Yes, the Security Council deplored the loss of life and clearly asked for a credible, full, impartial investigation to take place. Now the key question, as you say, well, who is actually going to do that? Now in our view there are two possible methods. One is that the Israelis themselves will lead an investigation, but to ensure that it is credible and impartial, and it's seen as such, that there should be some international involvement in that. So rather like the South Koreans, who did an investigation into the sinking of their ship last month, and they had some international investigators there as well, and so that the results of those investigations were credible to the outside world. So that is one option, that the Israelis do that, and we're pressing the Israelis to come forward and make such an announcement. If, on the other hand, that the Israelis are not planning to do that, or not prepared to do that, then I think some other form of international investigation is warranted. So that's the position. But whilst we're arguing about the investigation, I think it's very important not to lose sight of actually the longer term issue, because this is going to happen again and again. There are already ships heading, a sort of second wave of the flotilla, heading towards Israel. And the key issue is humanitarian access into Gaza. So what we want to do is use the next few days. Yes, we have to have an investigation, but let's use the next few days to work on the real issue, which is the blockade by Israel of Gaza. And what we need to do is find a reliable way that allows proper humanitarian access into Gaza, but at the same time gives assurance to Israel that the access to Gaza will not be used to bring in weapons, rockets, etc., that will be used against the Israelis. So that is the only really sustainable way to prevent this sort of incident happening again.
Last night on CNN, President Obama addressed this issue, and getting back to the point of investigation, he very carefully did not say it should be an international investigation. He said it should be an investigation up to international standards. I guess it seems as if, I don't think it's anything against Israel to be saying that it's hard for a government to investigate itself.
Except that Israel has done that in the past, and done so very credibly. I mean, they did have an Israeli investigation into the war with Lebanon. They did have an investigation into the attack on the Palestinian camps in the past, which was seen by the international community as very credible. So I wouldn't rule out the fact that just because it was an Israeli-led investigation, that it couldn't possibly be credible or up to international norms. But from our point of view, for that to be possible, it probably should include international involvement.
And the second point, which you mentioned, was the blockade. I mean, do you foresee any Security Council action? Probably not a resolution, or at least a presidential statement calling for Israel to lift this blockade.
Well, in essence, we did that last week, or sorry, earlier this week. That the Security Council made clear that there should be sustained humanitarian access into Gaza, in accordance with previous resolutions that the Security Council has passed. And that's what we're going to be working on. There's a quartet meeting on Monday, and that will be looking precisely at a plan which will allow that humanitarian access and prevent a repeat of this tragedy.
So I guess you seem to be suggesting that there's momentum right now for Israel lifting the blockade. I mean, it's not for you to speak for the United States, but do you see your counterparts across the table at the Security Council agreeing to something like that?
Well, I think there is P5 unanimity on this issue. We had a meeting with the Secretary General a couple of days ago, where there was no disagreement among all the P5 ambassadors about the need to find a sustainable way to ensure humanitarian access into Gaza. That is agreed by the whole of the Security Council on many occasions in the past. The question is the modalities of doing it and finding a way to do it which offers the right reassurance to Israel that opening up Gaza to humanitarian goods coming in won't also open it up to the import of ammunition, weapons, rockets, etc. for use by Hamas.
I wanted to move on to Iran. We're told that in the next week or two we should expect movement on sanctions resolution. Can you tell me what the sort of the current state of play of those negotiations are?
Yes, I think it's very likely. I can't be 100% clear-cut about the deadline or the timetable, but I think in the course of the next week that there will be a resolution that is put to the vote in the Security Council on Iran's nuclear program, which will impose new sanctions on Iran. But at the same time will reaffirm the fact that the P5+1 are open to extend the hand of friendship, further engagement with Iran on the basis of the very generous offer that we put to Iran in 2008. So I think a resolution which encompasses both those elements, tougher sanctions but reaffirming the offer of engagement, will be put to the vote in the next week.
I wanted to, along those lines, I'm curious to see, I guess, from an operational perspective, how the flotilla incident is affecting diplomacy around Iran sanctions. Because Turkey is on the Security Council. Flotilla, at least four Turkish citizens were killed. Turkey, is a very important player in these sanctions negotiations. How have the incidents sort of reacted with each other sort of at the Security Council and diplomacy?
I know it looks as though the two might be linked in some way because Turkey is a key player in both, but actually I don't think that is the case. I would not expect the sanctions resolution, which has been discussed for several weeks now, will be affected, or the timetable will be affected by what is happening on Gaza. The two things are quite separate and will run on separate tracks.
And I mean, are they currently running on separate tracks?
They're currently running on separate tracks, and I think they'll continue to run on separate tracks.
Interesting. That I guess is not sort of, it's not conventional wisdom that would be the case. But you're saying, I mean, you're in the room, you're there. So
absolutely, the two things are very separate, and I haven't heard anyone in the Security Council suggesting any linkage either in timing or in substance between the two.
Finally, I wanted to move on to, it seems like we're only dealing with crises, I'm sorry, but such is the nature, I suppose. North Korea. Probably 3 weeks ago, the report on the sinking of the Chinwon ship came out, and even the Secretary General himself, rather remarkably, I think, suggested that the Security Council take up this issue. And I'm wondering sort of what, first of all, is the British government supportive of Security Council action on around this particular incident?
Yes. The position at the moment is that we're waiting for the South Koreans to bring the issue to the notice of the Security Council. I understand that they may do that in the course of today. And once they do that, then the Security Council will need to decide how to react. Now, we believe that this was an act of aggression, that it is therefore quite right that the Security Council should react. Now, what that means in terms of the reaction, of course, will need to be decided among the 15 members of the Security Council, and will depend to some extent on what South Korea is suggesting that the Security Council should do.
Presumably, China also is a key player.
China is a key player in this. I mean, there are a number of key players. China is obviously one of those as a neighbour and an ally of North Korea. But I would expect the Security Council to take notice of this incident, and in the next week or two we'll decide how to react.
Finally, I just wanted to sort of open the floor to you. Like I said, we've only been discussing crisis issues. Is there anything else on your plate that viewers ought to be aware of, viewers ought to know more about?
Well, there is, Mark. I mean, of course, when we talk about the Security Council, by definition, we're talking about peace and security in the world, and that means crisis. We don't talk about all the places which don't have a conflict or crisis. But the UN is not all about the Security Council. The UN has many different functions, problems, and I would want to highlight in particular the peacekeeping work that the UN does. You know, over 120,000 UN peacekeeping forces around the world, which are doing fantastic work in preventing conflict, in preventing conflicts that are ending from starting up again, getting into peace building. You've got the humanitarian work of the UN, which we saw post the Haiti earthquake. You've got the human rights work, both here and in Geneva. So there's a whole wide range of work that the UN does. Of course, in many cases, and I fully understand, you focus on the crisis and with the work of the Security Council, and that is absolutely critical and vital. But there's a vast amount of work that is done more widely in the UN family, if you like, which it's important that your listeners and your watchers, your audience are aware of.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.